Swear and affirm the information or testimony you provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, Your Honor.
You may be seated.
Thank you.
And I'm just going to say one more time, because again, we're all spaced out in this facility. Anytime you can't hear anything from either an attorney or a witness, and I'll say this for all the witnesses, please let me know and I'll have them speak up. Mr. Fortunato, you may inquire.
Good morning. Could you state your name for the record?
Peter Navarro,
And would you be able to spell that for us?
Peternavarro.
And what is your occupation?
I'm a police officer with the city of Tumwater
How long have you been a police officer?
since March of 2018.
What kind of training did it take for you to become a police officer?
So I attended the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission, BLIA, or Basic Law Enforcement Academy, from July through November of 2018. That consists of 720 hours of course material where we learned about criminal law, patrol tactics, application and execution of search warrants, processing and handling of evidence, driving under influence, RCWs, and things of that nature. And it also included unarmed self-defense and firing ranges and things like that.
And you said this was at the academy that you learned this?
Yes, sir.
And have you had any training additionally after graduating the academy?
Yes, sir, I have.
Okay, could you go into a little detail about that?
So within the department, we conduct training periodically about every other month, 6 times a year, where it is department-based training where we go and reinforce the same teachings that we learned at the academy, and just kind of expand on it and stay current with current case law, and making sure that the practices that we are enforcing out there within the community are within case law and current standards as well.
Have you had any specific training on assault investigations?
With what I received over at the academy, understanding the RCW, and then with outside of that, I've taken some other training when it talks about responding to critical incidents, but that's very, as far as it wasn't very specific to assaults. It was more to a bunch of different crimes.
Have you ever conducted an assault investigation?
Yes, I have.
Would you say about how many, ballpark, if you had to guess?
That's in the hundreds.
Hundreds, okay. In your duties as a police officer, do you often interact with security guards?
Yes, I do.
And kind of in what capacity do you interact with security guards primarily?
They're either usually a good source of information for incidents that are happening within that particular area that they're protecting, whatever that building or department store, whatever the case may be. I've also interacted with them as far as them being able to identify potential suspects of crimes that have occurred within that area.
Okay. So now I want to talk to you a little bit about the incident. Were you on duty as a police officer on July 20th of 2023?
Yes, sir.
And what were the hours of your shift that day? Do you remember?
That specific day, I don't remember, but I usually work the 0500 or 5 a.m. to a 4 p.m. shift.
Okay. Do you remember being dispatched to the Department of Social and Health Services office in Tumwater that day?
Yes, I do.
And what had reportedly occurred that day?
The initial call came out as an assault in progress within Dshs.
And where is this DSHS office located?
Just north of Israel Road on Capitol Boulevard, about the 6800 block, I want to say.
And in what city is this located?
Tumwater.
In what county?
Thurston County.
In what state?
Washington State.
Were you the only officer to report to the DSHS office that day?
No, I was not.
What did you observe when you arrived at the office that day?
Upon arrival, there was a witness or a gentleman that was outside that had already started giving some information, and I asked that gentleman to just kind of stand by until we figure out exactly what was going on. He kept on pointing towards the inside. I was also met by a security guard outside, and at the same time, that's also when I met Mr. Farley that was standing outside, and I recognized him from previous incidents.
Objection, Your Honor.
Okay, I'm going to sustain the objection. I'm going to instruct the jury to disregard the answer just given. And you may ask your next question.
Your Honor,
Yes? And that answer will be stricken also.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, if we could have a sidebar.
Members of the jury, we're going to take you, sometimes we have breaks when we don't anticipate them. This is one of those times. And so you're going to be taken back into the jury room for just a second. This shouldn't be too long. And then we'll be brought back in when we're done here. Ms. Rowe?
Your Honor, this was one of the issues that was specifically addressed yesterday in motions in limine.
It was.
And the court's ruling on that was that the court was going the court granted my request that the officer not reference any prior incidents that he may have, or occasions that he may have dealt with Mr. Farley. The reason for that motion in limine was to prevent the jury, was to protect my client from jurors assuming that prior content with my client was of a criminal nature. I'm surprised that wasn't relayed to Officer Navarro, but I would be moving for a mistrial.
Mr. Fortunato?
Your Honor, you clearly stated that this is something that's going to be stricken from the record. As is mentioned in every jury instruction, you are not, and the jurors have been reminded several times, do not regard any information that was stricken from this court. I think upon a limiting instruction in that regard, what's already going to be in the jury instructions, this is not something that needs or nearly rises to the level of something that would cause a mistrial to be warranted. You've made it clear to the jury that this is something that they are not to engage with, not to entertain, and this is not something that is going to derail this case. So the city strongly opposes defense's motion as it is improper and there is no adequate basis for it.
So I guess I share Ms. Rowe's concern that this was litigated pre-trial in that this specific issue, these words were, she made a motion in limine to keep that out. That was granted. We talked about whether or not identification, and that maybe could be brought back in if identification became an issue. So I'm pretty concerned about that. That wasn't discussed with the witness beforehand, apparently. But on the other hand, I don't think this rises to the motion for mistrial is going to be denied at this point. I did instruct, I sustained your objection. I instructed the jury to disregard the answer. And I don't think that even though that has been heard by the jury, I don't think that's so prejudicial to warrant a mistrial at this point. So the motion for mistrial will be granted, but again, as I said, the objection was sustained. I've already stricken the answer, instructed the jury not to regard that. or to disregard that. That's also included in all final instructions. They'll be instructed not to disregard anything that I have stricken and asked to be removed. So they'll be instructed on that again during final instructions. But that's a long way of saying that the motion for the mistrial is denied at this point.
And Your Honor, if I could just make a record, I do, it's our position that there are things that are said that can't be unheard. I believe that the opportunity for prejudice outweighs the probative. And I believe that Officer Navarro's testimony contained inadmissible matter. So I would simply like to make the record for that.
Sure, and I agree with you that it it was an inappropriate answer and in violation of the motions in limine. I'm just saying it doesn't rise to the level of a mistrial at this point, and you've made a sufficient record in that regard. And we can bring the jury back in.
But before we bring in the jury, Your Honor, may the state potentially at least take the opportunity to inform Officer Navarro regarding the court's ruling with the motions in limine?
Yes, I would hope that he has gotten the message at this point. But the issue was whether or not Mr. Farley had been recognized with previous contacts. I ruled that wasn't to be mentioned unless certain things happened, and now it was mentioned, which is why we're here now. So don't mention that.
Yes, Your Honor.
And then with that, you can bring the jury back in and let the other witnesses. Apparently, there's another police officer, or is he?
No, he won't be called, Your Honor.
Thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
jury can come back in. Seated. Mr. Fortunato, you may ask your next question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Pardon that delay. Officer Navarro, could you describe the layout of the DSHS office kind of briefly, what the layout of the place looks like?
So the building itself is a multi-storied building. On the first floor, when you first enter, there's actually 2 points of entry. There's I would say the north entrance, and there would be an east entrance is the way that I would describe them. If you were to come in through the east entrance, it's a long hallway or passageway that leads you to the elevators. And then at the very end, it leads you through a set of double doors on the left-hand side that take you into the DSHS area. There's bulletin boards, informational packets that are up on that in that long hallway. If you were to come in through what I said would be the north entrance, that goes directly into the lobby area, the public entry for DSHS for anybody that needs to conduct business in there.
Okay. You said you weren't the only law enforcement officer that was present on the scene. What did the other law enforcement officers do when they arrived? Or I guess when you arrived, what were the other law enforcement officers doing at the scene?
So I had one officer that remained with me, and then another officer that was Detective Bowling that went, eventually he went inside to go speak with the parties involved and any other witnesses.
And you said you were outside. Did you observe any other patrons present at the DSHS office?
I did. There were some that were inside of the lobby area, and then a couple of them that were walking in and out. And that same gentleman that I had initially contacted was standing off in the distance, just kind of waiting, like I asked him to be contacted by another officer.
And did you remain outside for the duration of your investigation, or were you inside and outside?
No, I primarily stayed outside.
Okay.
Detective Bowling was inside.
So what did you do after arriving at the DSHS office in Tumwater?
Upon arrival, I had contacted Mr. Farley, and essentially went into trying to figure out what exactly was going on. I had advised him that our interaction was being video and audio recorded. And then that's when he had given me his statement of the reasons for the call,
Okay.
which was later relayed to Detective Bowling.
And I'm going to cut you off here a little bit. You said you spoke with an individual and you described him as Mr. Farley. Is that individual in this courtroom right now?
Yes, yes.
Would you be able to point him out by describing an article of clothing to me?
Sure thing, sir. He's currently wearing a black shirt with glasses and I believe tan pants and boots.
And Your Honor, let the record reflect that Officer Navarro is pointing to Mr. Jeremiah Farley.
It will.
What was Mr. Farley's demeanor when you were speaking with him?
He was conversational with me, as straightforward and direct as one could possibly be when interacting with a law enforcement officer, telling me exactly what had occurred
And
from his perspective.
what was his facial expression? If you can remember.
Yeah, from what I can remember, he was, yeah, I wouldn't say that he was mad or aggravated, but he definitely had a look of concern as to what had taken place.
Okay. And kind of what was his tone of voice when speaking with him?
Again, very direct, very straightforward and to the point.
And what was Mr. Farley doing when you arrived at the DSHS office?
He was exiting out of the DSHS office when I encountered him. He was walking east down the little small corridor. There's like an overhang with some pillars, which is where I had interacted with him. And it's a very short period in time there from the time he exited to when I started talking to him.
So you said you spoke with Mr. Farley. What did he say to you?
He had told me that he was inside of a DSHS, videoing, recording what the business practices were inside of the building. He told me that it's a public building, that he had the right to be inside of the building, recording its daily activities, to which the security guard had.
And I'm going to stop you right there. Did he mention having an appointment with the DSHS office that day?
No, he did not.
Okay. Did he say that, mention anything about being with someone else or if he was on his own that day?
He told me that he was on his own. There was nobody else there present with him.
And what did he say happened? He said he mentioned that he walked in and was recording. What did he say happened next?
He told me that he had walked in through what I had described as the east entrance, or I'm sorry, the west entrance, now that I'm thinking about my directionals there. He had walked in through there, was going down the hallway, again, recording the day-to-day operations, what takes place within the building.
And did he mention why he was recording?
He says that it was, he's a freelance reporter, a freelance reporter that was capturing footage for what's take place in the public buildings.
Okay. To your understanding, was he allowed to record in the DSHS office?
Within the DSHS office itself, there are some signs that says that there's no recording or videotapings that should be taking place. I also understand the right of being able to record in public spaces and in buildings as it sees fit. But my best of my knowledge, within the DSHS building, they have, because they deal with people's personal information and it's discussed out in the lobby, they're not to be recording in that area.
So you said he walked into the office and he was recording. What happened after that?
The security guard, from what Mr. Farley had told me, had approached him, had told him to stop recording, that recording was not allowed. There was a verbal exchange between the two gentlemen. At one point, from what Mr. Farley had described to me, was that the security guard had encroached into his personal space.
And I'm going to stop you right there. Did Mr. Farley say anything about him discontinuing his recording after being advised that it wasn't allowed in that room?
No, he told me that he was still recording.
And did he mention why he continued recording?
He believed that it was his right to record within that public space.
Okay, and you can go ahead and continue. I apologize for interrupting you.
So when the security guard approached him, Mr. Farley had told me that he had encroached into his personal space, causing him to just kind of back off a little bit, telling him to step away from him, that he had a right to be recording. There was a discussion or verbal altercation between the two of them.
And you say there was a verbal altercation and this discussion occurred. Did Mr. Farley mention where within the office this discussion occurred?
It happened in the hallway leading through the double doors, as he was walking through the building.
And you say these double doors, where did these double doors lead into again? I know you had mentioned that, but I want to be clear here where that is.
They lead into the DSHS lobby where the public is conducting their business and their information is being discussed.
Did he mention anything about other patrons being present in the office at the time?
Yes, he did.
Okay, go ahead and continue.
So, while this took place, it happened, like I said, at the double doors leading into the DSHS office. At some point during this altercation, it became a little bit, it became on the physical side, between Mr. Farley and the victim. And then that's when I believe other patrons within the lobby started becoming upset at what just took place.
And you say they became upset. How was that known? Did Mr. Farley describe any manifestations of that anger?
He told me that there were other people that were yelling at him within the lobby. He said that there were telling him to leave, that they shouldn't be recording in there. It was nothing physical. They were all at a good distance from him, yelling from across the room. I'd probably say the lobby is about maybe half the size of this room, maybe a little bit larger, but excuse me. They were just kind of yelling at him, telling him to stop, to leave the security guard alone. The security guard at one point broke contact with him. I believe his supervisor came in and took him away, from my understanding of it.
So you said that there was a physical altercation between Mr. Farley and the security guard.
Correct.
And this occurred after the argument between them.
Correct.
Did Mr. Farley mention to you anything about the security guard's reaction to that physical altercation?
He told me that he was obviously upset. He had taken a couple steps back. I believe there was some chest bumping that was happening between the two of them, some shoving that occurred. And again, this all happened right there at the entryway, kind of like the cusp between the hallway and the DSHS lobby.
Was Mr. Farley recording while he was speaking with you?
Yes, he was.
Did your office attempt to retrieve the recording of the events that afternoon?
From Mr.
From Mr. Farley, yes.
Yes, we did.
And how so?
In the course of our investigations, knowing that he was recording, I had asked if he could show me the video, to which he declined. Later on, as the investigation progressed and probable cause was established for Mr. Farley's arrest, we ended up seizing the video camera along with his cell phone. That way we could apply for a search warrant and obtain the video based off of the belief that there was some element to the crime that would have been captured within that video.
And you were saying throughout this encounter, Mr. Farley was recording the event. Was this just on one device, or what was the, I guess, device that he was using to record, if there was just one?
There were actually two devices, to the best of my knowledge, which were the two that were seized. One being his cell phone, which I saw him holding on with his hand, and the other one was it's a body worn camera. I believe it's a Bob log, or it's almost like a GoPro type camera that he had on his backpack satchel type.
And you said there was a search warrant that was applied to get the video within these devices. Was that eventually accomplished?
Yes, it was.
And so you were able to retrieve those recordings?
Yes, I was.
At any point, did Mr. Farley deny to you intentionally touching the security guard?
Mr. Farley said that he had done all that he can to defend himself. He felt that he needed to defend himself from the security guard based off of his actions. But then that's when the security guard left and he ended up taking off. Without rereading my report, I can't remember specifically if he had said whether or not he had pushed them back or not.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions for the witness.
Thank you. Ms. Rowe, you may cross-examine.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Officer Navarro.
Good morning, ma'am.
Officer Navarro, you indicated that you have been with the city of Tumwater for about 5 years. Is that correct?
Correct, ma'am.
Okay, so
I want to,
you come to the panel, to the podium, and you can speak a little louder. Thank you, ma'am.
move this aside. All right. I will speak louder. Let me move it a little more. So Officer Navarro, you indicated that you have been with the city of Tumwater since 2018. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you also indicated that you received assault training. What is your understanding of what an assault is?
It essentially means that it's any
Objection, Your Honor. That calls for information that wouldn't be known to this witness.
That's sustained. The jury's going to be instructed on the law. You may ask your next question, Ms. Rowe.
So you indicated that you were dispatched to DSHS and the dispatch indicated that there was an assault in progress. You also, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor, or yes, ma'am.
Now, you indicated you described the office layout.
Yes.
That's exhibit 1, exhibit 2, and exhibit 3. Do you recognize the what those pictures are of,
Yes, ma'am, I do.
and what are they of?
The DSHS lobby.
And do they look to be where the incident occurred that day?
Yes, it does, ma'am.
And what's been described as exhibit 1, is this the east entrance that you were referencing or the other entrance?
This appears to be the north entrance.
And bring your attention to what's been marked as exhibit 3. Is this the east entrance coming in from the hallway that you were referencing?
Correct. That is the entrance that comes in from the hallway. And I believe I mislabeled that earlier. I meant to say it's the west entrance.
Okay. Thank you. These to the jury.
Well, are you asking to have them admitted?
I am asking that.
Any objection to the admission of the 3 photos,
No,
Mr. Fortunato?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, they will be admitted, and yes, you can publish them to the jury.
Thank you. So you're in your Officer Navarro, in your description of the office layout, do those pictures depict what you understand to be the DSHS office?
Yes, ma'am.
And do they also depict the 2 points of entrance? I believe you indicated that it's the east entrance and the north entrance.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
And you indicated in your testimony that the east entrance was located in a long hallway. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And that hallway contains bulletin boards. Have you ever looked at any of the information that's posted on the bulletin boards?
I have in the past. Yes, ma'am.
And you also indicated that there were doors, double doors on the left side. That was the left side of the east entrance that is part of the long hallway.
Yes, ma'am.
And you also indicated that when you arrived, you made contact with Mr. Farley. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you advised that you were recording your interaction with Mr. Farley.
Yes, ma'am.
And was Mr. Farley also recording you during that contact?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you ask him during that time to cease his recording of your contact, of your interaction?
As in to stop it?
Yes.
No, ma'am.
So it seems like you were recording him and he was recording you. Is that correct?
Correct.
And when asked about Mr. Farley's demeanor, you indicated that he was conversational and straightforward in his answers. Was he polite?
Yes, ma'am.
Was he respectful?
Yes, ma'am.
And you indicated that his facial expressions showed concern. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know what he was concerned about?
Essentially what had taken place within the DSHS lobby. He was obviously upset about the interaction that he had with the security guard, and the reasons why we were contacting each other at that point.
Yes. Was he calm?
Sorry?
Was his demeanor calm also?
Yes, ma'am. I would say he was fairly calm.
And you indicated that Mr. Farley, as part of your interaction with Mr. Farley, you indicate he told you that he was inside the department, the DSHS office, investigating or looking into their business practice and daily activities. Is that correct?
Objection, Your Honor, that was never. Facts not in evidence, Your Honor. That wasn't asked on direct.
Overruled. You can ask you may need to repeat your question, Ms. Rose.
Did Mr. Farley tell you why he was there at the DSHS office?
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
It's overruled in that it's an admission by a party opponent. And also you would discuss with this witness statements attributed to Mr. Farley. And so given that you started there, Ms. Rowe will be allowed to continue. So you can answer that question.
Yes, ma'am. Could you repeat the question again, ma'am?
Do you remember Mr. Farley telling you that he came to DSHS regarding the business practices and daily activities?
Yes, ma'am.
Did that cause you concern?
No, ma'am.
You also indicated in your testimony that Mr. Farley indicated that he was recording the day-to-day activities and that he was a freelance reporter of public buildings. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Did that cause you any concern?
No, ma'am.
Why not?
Objection, Your Honor, relevant.
I'm going to sustain the objection to the last question.
You also indicated in your testimony that you believed that there were signs regarding recording. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever seen any of those signs personally?
I've seen them inside of the lobby. If you were to come in through a doorway that leads you directly into the lobby, they're right there off to the left, ma'am. Where there's some windows where businesses gets conducted.
So are the signs located closer to the north entrance or closer, or are the signs at the east entrance?
The ones that I was referencing are at the north entrance.
And the north entrance was the opposite side of the room as the east entrance?
Correct.
Are you aware of any signs around the east entrance?
Those signs wrap around the same windows where all of the business is conducted, and right next to the east window, right next to the east doors there's also a where everybody has all of their intake taken care of. That also shows a sign.
And you've personally viewed a sign at the east entrance?
If my memory serves me correct, I've seen them there before, yes, ma'am.
And they are inside the lobby?
Yes, ma'am.
Providing you with what's been marked as exhibits 1, 2, and 3. Can you point to an area where you believe the signs are located?
With exhibit 1, it's not within view of that picture, but as I'm looking at it, it's off to the right of it where the windows all start.
Okay. And I'm showing you what's been marked as exhibit number 3. Can you indicate where you believe the signs were located around the east entrance?
If I'm not mistaken, I believe that I have seen signs in the past near this window where there's a kiosk there.
Do you know if you saw those signs there that day?
Not that day, I can't definitively say that I did or did not.
And if I could review that's been marked as exhibit number 2. Are there any places where the signs would be located in that picture?
Right by where this lady is sitting at on the left-hand side of the photograph, and then by the empty chair on the right-hand side, there's some signs there that says no videography or taping or recording.
So if you could you circle what you believe to be the notices regarding video recording?
Your Honor, objection. This is an exhibit. That defense is showing this. This is not something that the witness should be highlighting or marking in any way.
Okay, overruled. You can.
Could you circle where you believe these signs are in that picture? You indicated one was behind somebody.
Those are the 2 that I can remember at this time.
In line where these pictures are is this first picture of the north entrance. You indicated.
Yes, ma'am.
This is the east entrance.
Yes, ma'am.
And the picture in the middle, is it basically the lobby area? A portion of the lobby area between the 2 entrances?
Yes, ma'am. It's essentially capturing it almost in a panoramic fashion, if you will, of if you were to come in through the north entrance and look to your left, that's essentially what you would see if you would pan from the left to the right.
And according to your testimony, you indicated that Mr. Farley entered on the east entrance.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Do you know where inside the DSH office the incident was alleged to have occurred?
It started in the long, narrow hallways that leads to the double doors that lead into the DSHS lobby. The physical altercation took place just inside of those double doors of the DSHS lobby, right next to the intake kiosk or station.
So according to your information, the incident did not occur in the actual middle of the room lobby itself. Is that correct? It basically occurred in the doorway of the east entrance.
Objection compound.
Overruled.
So the incident, the physical altercation itself took place by the doorways. And then when the hollering from the other patrons that were inside, that was more towards the middle of the lobby. So it did lead into the middle of the lobby.
Now, in your view of the DSHS lobby, the two places that you circled on the page where the notices were, they were not at, those signs were not located right inside the east entrance. Is that correct?
Correct. Where those two that I circled are in the middle of the lobby.
And so if the if the alleged altercation happened in the east side doorway, had Mr. Farley seen, did he have prior notice of any recording rules?
Objection speculation, Your Honor.
Sustained.
It is your understanding that the incident took place, I believe you said, just inside the double doorways.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you also indicated in your testimony that you weren't concerned about Mr. Farley recording you in your interaction with him. And I believe you indicated that what is your understanding of a person's right to record?
Objection,
public
Your
space.
Honor. Speculation.
Sustained.
Is DSHS a public building?
To the best of my knowledge, it is a public building.
Is the lobby of DSHS a public lobby?
It does have public access.
And are there any requirements that a person has to have a set appointment in order to go to the DSHS office?
Not to my knowledge, I don't think they need to have an appointment. They could definitely walk in and, attempt to receive services from DSHS during their normal business hours.
And are you aware of any video cameras that might be located in the DSHS office?
Not sure if they have video surveillance of that building or not. I did not inquire with them at that point.
So you're not personally aware that the DSH office is under camera surveillance?
Correct. I'd have to inquire with them and find out.
Did you inquire as such that day?
No, I did not, because I was with Mr. Farley. Detective Bowling was inside speaking with the security team.
To your knowledge, did Detective Bowling
Objection,
view
Your
any?
Honor. Hearsay and speculation.
I haven't asked for any statement, Your Honor.
We'll go ahead and ask your question, then I'll rule on the objection.
To your knowledge, did Detective Bowling watch any surveillance video of the incident that happened that day?
Okay, I'm going to sustain the objection, and that's, yeah, the objection is sustained.
Have you seen any video surveillance cameras from the DSHS office?
Not that I could recollect right now. No, ma'am.
Now, you indicated that according to Mr. Farley, he was there conducting or viewing the business practices. And I believe according to your testimony at some time that I believe you indicated that the security guard told Mr. Farley to stop recording. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know where the security guard was located when he asked Mr. Farley to stop recording?
In the long hallway that leads to DSHS.
And you also testified that Mr. Farley indicated that he did not stop recording in the hallway and that he believed it was his right to record. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you at that time inform Mr. Farley that regarding any laws regarding recording?
No, I did not inform of any laws about that.
Did you discuss any particular rules regarding the DSHS office regarding recording?
No, I did not.
Was Mr. Farley arrested or cited for recording?
Not for recording. He was cited and arrested for the assault in the 4th degree.
So even though you indicate that you believe there are signs that indicate that there should be no recording, that he was not cited or arrested for that charge, why not?
Objection, Your Honor.
That's sustained.
Have you ever arrested someone for video recording in a public space?
No, I have not, ma'am.
During the investigation that followed that day, were there any patrons that contacted law enforcement requesting that any video be erased from that day?
I didn't have any patrons approach me telling me to release or erase any videos.
Any patrons that expressed any privacy concerns that they felt were violated that day?
Objection,
No.
Your Honor. Hearsay and relevant.
Sustain the objection.
Now, you indicated when you arrived, you saw Mr. Farley exiting the building. Did Mr. Farley appear to exit the building to speak with the responding officers?
I think that was by chance that he was exiting at the exact same time that we were arriving. But I do not believe that he was trying to evade or flee or get away from the situation. But he did make it a point to come and interact with us.
Did Mr. Farley share with you his opinion that he believed he was assaulted?
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Overruled.
Your Honor, ask for a sidebar, please.
Okay, jury, we're not. We're actually, why don't we're coming up on our morning recess time. We're gonna go ahead and take a morning recess right now. And so you can go and break. We'll be at about 10 minutes and we'll reconvene. So you can go ahead and be seated. Mr. Fortunato.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Your Honor, Corey Thompson for the state. The court previously allowed Ms. Rowe to ask and get an answer under the party opponent exception to hearsay. However, she's trying to offer her own client statements through the witness. That is not a party opponent. If this was a civil case and we had a client, then she could get our client's statements in, but it's her client. That's not a party opponent. That's the party.
The admission is coming, he's the party.
Yes, but party opponent. We are the opponent to him, so we can introduce his statements.
Right.
She cannot introduce his statements through another witness.
But
if he wants to,
hang on just a second. But if you begin, bringing his statements in, isn't she allowed to? I mean, you can't just pick and choose. Like, I'm just going to get this bit of his statement and that bit of his statement. If you introduce some of his statement, isn't she allowed to cross-examine him on the complete statement?
no, Your Honor. They can on anything we introduced, not the complete statement. We had we never introduced his beliefs or his opinions on things. We simply anything, the actions that the statements that were introduced of his from the state were his actions that he relayed to the witness, not about any of his opinions about his validity or legal conclusions. She's attempting to basically get him testimony in full, his opinions about things in full, without having to put him on the stand. And that is absolutely contemplated in this, and why the admission by a party opponent only can come from one side.
Just a second. Ms. Rowe, and
Your Honor, I believe the state opened the door for admissions of Mr. Farley's side of the story as Officer Navarro testified to. Officer Navarro indicated, and this was elicited out of his initial testimony, that Mr. Farley told him he was there to record business practices and daily activities, that Mr. Farley indicated that he was a freelance reporter, and that Mr. Farley indicated as I indicated before, Your Honor, I believe the state opened the door to Mr. Farley's, and Officer Navarro testified as to what was relayed to him by Mr. Farley as his version of the incident.
Your Honor, this is
Quick. And Your Honor, that is all recitation of his actions that the state introduced, not his opinions about things. If he wants to take the stand and relay his opinions, then he can take the
Who's gonna
stand.
Speak for the state here.
The state is
I thought-
speaking
I
on
thought
this one
Mr.
right now.
Mr. Fortunato started, but
The state's addressing this, or Corey Thompson addressing
Okay,
the
thank
city
you.
for the city.
yeah, you're right. Thanks.
Thank you, Your Honor. There were two additional issues the state wanted to take advantage of having the jury out of the room to address. Or excuse me, the city.
Bring up something else. And I'll get back to this.
Yes, Your Honor. The the state does have continuing concerns that an admitted exhibit was altered after its admission. We'd ask that a new exhibit of the exact same be readmitted. We'd stipulate to its admissibility, but we've now, an exhibit that's been admitted and published to the jury has subsequently been altered. And that is problematic.
Okay, so I don't think it's problematic. I mean, I've had many trials where a lot of times people will have the easel, get something admitted, and they'll have the go up there and mark on that during the course of the trial. To me, that's no different from what's happened here. We don't do that as much anymore, given that a lot of it's digital.
Well,
To have a witness testify to an exhibit, then admit it, and then mark on the exhibit consistent with their testimony. That happens all the time, doesn't it?
No, Your Honor. I've never in 7 years, never had an exhibit admitted and marked. Now, I have had exhibits admitted after they were marked up.
Okay.
Off of an easel, for example. Like I have a witness draw a picture to describe something and then mark it and admit it into the record.
We're not going to do that. Okay. To me, that's really kind of a distinction without a difference. If you have an exhibit there that's may have been admitted, or it hasn't been admitted yet, then they put marks on it, then it gets admitted. I don't see a whole lot of difference between having a picture and someone marking on there. I mean, it's just, to me, that's a sequence of events, which really doesn't make much of a difference.
So, understanding the court, the concern here is that it's now become two different exhibits. The exhibit that the jury first was published to them as they saw it for the record has now been altered in a way.
And they saw that alteration, and it was happened in real time in front of them. I'm not sure what you're asking for, but I'm not going to admit a second picture of it. I mean, you can, if the jury can see the picture, they can see the markings on it relative to where the signs were in the lobby. Allegedly, that's his position.
I understand the court's ruling. I did want to make that for the record. The second concern the state has is if defense has any more exhibits they wish to introduce, that they be given to the state right now. We were given these exhibits for the first time and saw these photos for the first time before Ms. Rowe admitted them to the court.
And so
we're not aware of any other exhibits.
Just a second. Yeah, all exhibits should be pre-marked. You know, it's a constant source of irritation to me when all of a sudden we just have to stop everything to have an attorney come in there and have the exhibits marked. Have them pre-marked before the trial starts. And if you have any more exhibits, either side, get them marked. The second thing is, you know, I asked if there was any objection to these admission, and there were none. And so that's.
I agree, Your Honor. There's the reason why the state did not object is there are photos that we would stipulate are in fact photos of the area, but we're concerned that there might be other evidence out there that has yet been discovered in violation of 4.7 obligations of defense.
Right. And if they are seeing that for the first time, had they objected because they hadn't seen it before, it might not have been admitted because they haven't been disclosed. You're supposed to disclose all this stuff prior to trial. So they didn't object. And so if you have any exhibits, you know, give them to them now, please. And have them marked. I gave
the state all of the exhibits that I plan to introduce.
Okay.
It's my understanding that the state.
Hang on just a second. He just told me that they got these pictures for the first time now. Is that right or wrong?
We got today, yes.
So the pictures that you admitted in exhibits 1, 2, and 3, those were just shown to him for the first time mid-trial?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. That's not appropriate. You need to disclose all the exhibits well prior to trial.
Your Honor, I totally understand this trial has, and generally I do. Also, it's my understanding that the state has some exhibits that it's going to seek to introduce.
Yes, and they're already marked and they've been discovered.
Have I received a copy of them and a hard copy of them today?
No.
Have you been given them to you? Have you received them in the course of discovery?
She has.
Yes.
I've received quite a bit of. I've received 10 videos. I'm not exactly sure which specific.
Well, you can ask them.
Pieces of evidence that the state is seeking to introduce today.
Right, but okay, so here's the thing. If you know the state, if they have a mountain of evidence, they can pick and or either side. If either side has a mountain of evidence, they can pick and choose what they want to admit at trial. And then if you want to ask them, they can tell you. But what's not appropriate is to have but they have to disclose it to both sides beforehand. But if you have evidence that you intend to present at trial that hasn't been disclosed prior to trial, that's the issue.
Understood, Your
And
Honor.
so, I mean, if the state, again, I don't, none of it was disclosed to me, so I'm not sure exactly what was disclosed one way or the other. But if the state or city, excuse me, picks and choose what they want to admit, they certainly can, as long as it's been disclosed to you prior to trial. It's the same thing with you. If you have a bunch of pictures you want, you could pick and choose which ones you want to admit or introduce, but you need to show those to all of them to the state beforehand. And so what I'm hearing from the city is that these pictures that were admitted, which are, we could debate, I guess, as to their value, but they'd never seen these things before. And that was the objection that they had. And that's what I think needs to be taken care of. But if the state has, you say 10 videos, they only choose to admit 2, they can, and they don't, but as long as they've disclosed them to you beforehand.
Understood, Your Honor. And this was not an intentional act. It was last minute.
All right.
And I
Just a
would
second
argue that
on this, and then yeah.
I would like to address the court too, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Your Honor, I believe also in the state's initial direct of Mr. Officer Navarro, they asked whether Detective Officer Navarro indicated that Mr. Farley told him that the security guard told him to stop recording, but that he did not to stop. And then I wrote this as after Detective Navarro's testimony, and it is, he believed it was his right to record. That was elicited in the state's direct, which would show that Mr. Officer Navarro did testify as to what Mr. Farley's beliefs were.
So I'm going to overrule the objection in the sense that I'm going to allow the witness to answer and the question about what Mr. Farley had said. The state in its direct examination elicited a lot of testimony from the officer about statements that that were attributed to Mr. Farley, and it got right up next to the question Ms. Rowe asked, and just to pick and choose without giving a full characterization of the witnesses or the defendant's statements, I think it's appropriate to introduce other things rather than just, you can only introduce the things that you can't pick and choose. Once you get into his statements, I think the defense is entitled to introduce other statements, provide a complete picture of what the statement was and the position at the time. So that's going to be overruled, and I'm going to allow the question to be asked and answered.
Understand.
And then how much longer do you intend to go here, Ms. Rowe?
I'm almost done, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I would like to point out a long history of cases that self-serving statements are not admissible.
But well, they're not. I understand that, but I think the rules change a little bit when you get into again, there's a rule on this I can't find. I'll look for it over the break. If again, a part of the statement is again, just in fairness, the other parts of the statement come in if you introduce part of it, and there's a line of cases on that also. And so
to a degree, Your Honor, this is the defendant has an opportunity to take the stand and say all of those statements, not express his opinions through another witness. That's self-serving hearsay.
I understand that. But when the state gets to start get into the statements and all of that and the admissions or what have you, then I think the defense is entitled to complete the statement. The state had not gotten into any of that stuff that was said to it's for an example, if you and again, I know this was example used on me a couple more than once a time. If you have a murder case, if you have someone who says, well, I killed this person, but I did it in self-defense, state can't get on here and say, well, get the admission, well, I killed this person, and then not say, but I did it in self-defense. That is self-serving hearsay. But if you get that first part of the statement in, you're going to be allowed to supplement all of that.
Okay, but the witness's legal conclusions and legal statements aren't relevant to his actions, and they aren't contradictory to his actions or explanatory of his actions. He needs to take the stand and make that statement if the defense wishes to introduce it, Your Honor. All right. Not through another witness. Otherwise, a witness could sit there or a defendant could sit there and say whatever the heck they want to a law enforcement officer, and the instant the state tries to introduce some of their statement, defense can then introduce all of their statement. That's not the case and never has been the case.
Okay, you've created your record. I'm going to overrule the objection, and then we'll go from there. And we can.
And I only have a few more questions, Your Honor. This amount right here on my page, it's not even a whole paragraph.
Right. We'll bring the jury back in. Seated in the courtroom. And Ms. Rowe, you may continue.
So Officer Navarro, going back to your testimony regarding your interaction with Mr. Farley and your communications with him. I believe you indicated that Mr. Farley informed you that the security guard got into his personal space and that he backed up. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
And that there was a discussion that was had between the security guard and himself. And that this was when the altercation occurred. Is that correct?
Correct. The discussion led to the altercation.
Pardon?
The discussion led to the altercation. It evolved into that.
Did you at any time inform Mr. Farley that he was not allowed to video record in the public space?
No, I did not.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Okay, sustained.
And I believe you indicated that there was information relayed to you that there was some chest bumping and shoving. Is that correct?
Correct.
And while you were communicating with Mr. Farley, was there any other officers around?
Yes, there was.
And were these officers also being recorded by Mr. Farley?
Yes, ma'am.
Did any of those officers request that Mr. Farley turn off his recording during the interaction between you and he?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Sustained.
You indicated that you subsequently ended up taking Mr. Farley's cell phone and his device that is close to a GoPro as evidence. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Did Mr. Farley resist in giving you those devices?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Sustained.
You were able to retrieve the devices.
Correct.
And I believe the last question that the state asked was, did Mr. Farley deny any intentional touching? And I believe your response was that he believed he did what he needed to do to protect himself. Is that correct?
That's what he had told me. Yes, ma'am.
Did you ask him to go into detail regarding that statement?
I did. However, Mr. Farley said that he did not want to answer or respond to any questions, that the statements that he had made were the statements that he was going to give and no further statements after that.
And did you personally speak to any other witnesses regarding the incident that day?
No, I did not that day, ma'am.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions for you. Thank you.
Any redirect, Mr. Fortunato?
Yes, please, Your Honor. City only has 4 questions they'd like to ask, but hopefully this won't take too long. Thank you. Officer Navarro, is recording during an investigation or communications standard procedure for an officer?
Based off of Tumwater Police Department policy, it is, yes.
Okay. Were you primarily outside when you spoke with Mr. Farley?
The entire time I spoke with him was outside.
The entire time was outside. Did Mr. Farley did tell you he was aware of the DSHS rule regarding recording? Is that correct?
Objection, Your Honor. That was not.
Overruled. He can ask he asked the questions, he can answer.
I'll ask you the same question. Mr. Farley did tell you he was made aware of the DSHS rule regarding recording. Is that correct?
Correct.
To your knowledge, is Mr. Farley a lawyer?
Not to my knowledge, no, sir.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect, Ms. Rowe? Or recross, I'm sorry.
Yes, Officer Navarro, how did Mr. Farley tell you he was aware of any rule of DSHS?
During his statement, he had told me that the security guard told him to stop recording, that there was an area that he was not supposed to be recording in.
So to clarify, he indicated to you that the security guard told him of the rule,
Correct.
not that he had any prior knowledge of this rule.
Correct.
No further questions.
Anything further, Mr. Fortunato? May
Nothing
this
from
witness
the
be
city.
excused?
Yes, you may.
You may step down. Feel free to leave. And Mr. Fortunato, you may call your next witness.